Hi guys, welcome to Geek Dogs and DiD. I'm your wonderful host Scarlet, and here we catch Julep, and we're here doing our DiD and D&D.
Perfect. You said it perfectly. You said it perfectly the first time. For the benefit of the internet, we have already we already have had the first 20-minute introductory conversation, in which me and Scarlet realised that we'd forgotten to record the entire thing. So we are redoing the introductory conversation, and I'm going to try and remember all the questions I asked Scarlet, and Scarlet will endeavour to remember what she said, and then hopefully you'll have a very interesting, because it's really interesting having the conversation with you, Scarlet. You have a very different look and perspective on the system as a whole and your interactions with it. So this is the first time it's not the first time actually, Scarlet, we've had you here, is it? You've been here before.
I'm here a lot. When we did my build, I was around. You'll notice by my kind of sinister little grin that I tend to do.
Yeah. And actually, if when you've watched this video, people watching, if you go back and watch the original one where we introduced the concept of Scarlet's build and did her roles, you'll probably be able to see now the body language, the smile is definitely Scarlet's through most of that video. And like Luna, who has a very, her voice is higher and slightly floatier than Danny's, yours is actually a sort of much more measured and paced, I'd say.
Yeah, it's more closer to Anita's, yes. I think, but I'm not. I like to think I'm not as unemotional as her. You will hear more inflections in my voice as I talk about stuff, because I'm not as disconnected from the world as she is.
So this is the first time that Scarlet has been Scarlet, so it's a pleasure to meet you and finally be able to talk to you directly and things. So I guess we were talking earlier about your role in the system. So you started as this concept of what they call a Persecutor Alter. Now, for the benefits of people watching, if you remember that episode where me and Danny talked about it before, and Scarlet will be able to give her view on what that means. The Persecutor role is seen quite often as dangerous or harmful to the host, to the system, potentially to the body.
Yeah.
Not to the system, because your job is actually to protect the system, but it may be detrimental to the body or the situation the body's in.
Yeah. So we will burn bridges. Like, we will break down situations. We will intimidate and scare people to leave us alone. We will cause conflict in situations. And it's all situations where we know it's going to end bad, because we've been in situations like that before and it has gone bad. So it's very much it's a fight or flight, but we do the fight. Like, the fastest way out of the situation is to fight our way out. And for the ones that aren't the trauma holders, because I have the trauma memories, I am one of the trauma holders, they don't understand the reason behind. They don't understand how we can be so spiteful and cynical and nasty to some people. And it's because there are some people where you have to be like that. Like, you have to meet them on their level to get them to back down, because they see you as prey otherwise.
And as you said, so we were talking earlier that most of the trauma holders for the system are the passive alters. You are yourself, you're the only active alter that holds the trauma.
Yeah.
Do you mind retelling me a bit about, obviously we talked about this earlier, and I don't want you to go over it too much if it's uncomfortable, but you talked about in essence that a lot of the trauma was done to you either through you being there in the situation or...
Yeah. So I've been around in the system from like early teens. Me and Luna kind of arrived on scene. And Luna was the one that basically functioned in the world as the happy, no problems, go lucky person. I was the one that dealt with all the crap, essentially. So if Danny got herself into a situation, like, I was switching, and it's essentially like taking a beating for a sibling, because you're like protecting them, And it's not that she wouldn't be able to deal with it herself, it's just the way that DID works is you have some alters that are just, we're stronger and more numb than others because we're essentially designed to be able to take a beating and to keep fighting.
In essence, that's your job. So Luna's job is to get the system through the world from everybody else's perspective, seeing this, everything's okay, there's no problems, la 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 la. And your role was to basically step up and be in that situation, whatever that traumatic situation is and that trauma is, you take it so that Danny didn't have to.
Yeah.
And that, so in essence, that no one else had to.
Yeah, it's because in the trauma situations is I understand them. I was there. There's some things where Hope, our main trauma holder, so any of like the really bad stuff, she would switch out and she would take a lot of it because she freezes whereas I fight. And with a lot of situations, there's a point at which you can't fight anymore. Like you're done. You just have to kind of cringe and just deal with it until it's over.
I guess that would be when Hope would switch in.
That's when Hope would switch in, and she will do with it, and then whatever will get us out of the situation safely afterwards would do that. And sometimes it's a situation where I'm fronting and someone is just there and does something, in which case they deal with me because I'm there, and I can usually deflate situations pretty quickly because I'm instantly on guard because I'm always on guard, and I've got quite a nasty mouth on me, so I tend to go for the I'll shoot you down before you can attempt to, so people don't bother with me because I'm not worth the effort. And that's why, because Danny's such a nice person, and Luna is, I don't think she could hurt a fly, to be honest.
No. And you talked earlier, so you we won't go over the story you told me about something that happened to Anne a couple of weeks ago. But one of the things you said that was really interesting, that in that situation you started and your role is to basically verbally intimidate, and then you said if that doesn't work, then Sonia kicks in. And you actually had a really sweet comment about Sonia being your girl. So you have a very close relationship with Sonia.
We do. I think because we both end up in those situations and we're both the fight to get out of it. I think one of the ways that my intimidation works so well is because I know she's there, and basically I will control like the mind and the mouth, and she's there with the body. Like, so I think she just must have, it's almost like, you know, when you see in movies where you've got this really small character kind of fighting down someone, and they basically got like this giant, you know, intimidating presence stood behind them, and the person like backs down and they're like, yeah, I scared you, and actually no, it's because there's like a giant person behind them. I think she must just have that kind of thing, so people don't call my bluff because they can see the intention in my physical stance, that actually this is someone that is prepared to fight, so it's not worth the effort.
And that's really interesting. So we obviously talked earlier about how when Danny's doing stuff, you can control the body and the hands when it comes to arting. And I've seen it before, having conversations with Danny, where you're clearly in control and those hands are moving completely separately. But that's another instance where actually there is a benefit in the system. Once there is a connection between the system and that knowledge of one of you can do one aspect, and another can control the other aspect.
Yeah, I think it's very much like a divide and conquer. You know, it's like in those situations, I focus on reading the body language of the person and saying what I think is going to be the best to get them to back down, while she does all the physical kind of martial arts style base position stances, where people look at her and like, okay, she's not just what she's doing. Yeah, she's actually got something to follow through with this, and that's usually enough to ease any situation. Whereas Anita would be, she can do all that too, like she's not a pushover by any means, but she'll usually just be like really chilled out, and she'll be like, dude, come on, let's like get a pint or something. She's
more likely to diffuse the situation with sort of logic and let's have a chat about this kind of situation. So one of the things we talked about earlier, and I think it would probably be really, really interesting or hopefully it was interesting for me, so I'm hoping it'd be interesting for people watching. So obviously you've been around for a long time. You said you've been around since school years, and you told me earlier that one of your biggest frustrations, or for you, a lot of the frustration you have is that you didn't want to be on the inside, you wanted to be on the outside. So this last year or so, Dani is aware of her alters, and she's been exploring what that means both for her but also for all of you as a system and a collective. So how's this year been for you?
Been a very weird year. I have friends that call me by my name, which I haven't had before. Usually the people that I know are people that I know from bars or clubs. They're very shallow relationships.
But these are, people who actually care about Scarlet's needs.
Yeah. Like one of our friends, if I haven't been out for a while, will basically tell Dani, it's not fair to let Scarlet not come out for a while when she wants to. And to be fair, sometimes I just don't want to. I'm happy in my own little world. But, like, it's nice to have people on the outside that will kind of remind Dani that I should come out and that I can do my thing, and that, most importantly, I'm not going to completely destroy her life just because I am out. I know she gets very worried if I come out around Simon, our partner. And he's really fun to intimidate, and I can't help myself.
But I think and I guess before, some of that would have been because, you and Dani have had a difficult relationship even before Dani knew you existed as Scarlet. Yeah. But you two have always had a difficult relationship, and you obviously have been, I guess, more aware of her frustration, because she's been frustrated at this part of her brain that seems to want to, challenge things and burn bridges, whereas you're like, no, actually it's me. I'm aware of me, you're just not aware of me. So and obviously there, in past situations, whereas I suppose now, actually, I guess there's a part of you's doing it because it's just fun. You're not actually doing it to burn any bridges. You're actually probably having more fun now than you've had before.
I'm having so much fun. And the best thing with Simon is, like, he adores Dani and Luna completely. He gets on really well with Anita. Like, he's so on board with the system that it's really annoying, but I can't really fault him. And I try, because I will try and pick holes in everyone to make that they're,
I guess.
Yeah, it's like I do test. So when I'm out, I will test and I will push him slightly. And he passes everything I throw at him. And because I know he's slightly intimidated by me, I can't help but play on that. And I will just...
I mean, he's quite sweet.
He's
not a particularly... I mean, he's just a nice, sweet guy.
He's a nice guy. Like, I didn't think they existed. And for
and actually,
I was like, he's too good to be true. These guys don't exist. Like, men are not like this.
From your perspective, your role is to come in, push the buttons, and normally at which point that's when the man or the person in the relationship fails.
Yeah.
Dani by running away, and Simon hasn't, because he is actually very open to the system and to each of yours. What's really interesting and really nice to hear when you guys talk is the fact that you all refer to him as your partner, because he in essence is a partner with everybody who wants to be a partner in the situation.
I mean, he's the partner of ours. Like, I have no emotional attachment to him whatsoever. I don't consider myself in a relationship with him. And I'm pretty certain he thinks the same about me.
But in essence, he is still the partner of...
But he's still the partner of Dani. He's the partner of Luna.
The collective is there dating.
Yeah, so I respect the fact that, because I'm one of the ones that I like to have fun. I'm one of the more kind of risque alters. I know that everyone has a sexual protector. I'm kind of there. And I like to go and dabble in that stuff. But I'm also very aware. So I have never pushed in that situation. If I know Dani's in a relationship with someone, then I'll respect the fact she's in a relationship. I won't necessarily respect the guy she's with, because it's my job to push buttons. And often when I push the buttons of the guys, they snap or they do something to prove to me early on. And I'm like, look, this is a red flag. And she's like, oh yeah, but it might be this or it might be that, or they're going through a hard time, and excuse after excuse after excuse. And then they'll like continue on with their bullshit. And I'm like, look, they've still not changed. They've still not done this thing. Whereas with him, with Simon, I'm like, I can't fault him. Like, if Danny has been upset by something he has or hasn't done, not only has he apologized, but he's changed his behavior. And I've never seen that in a relationship before.
Has this, because obviously now you are out more, and like you said, you actually have friends, not just associates or people who you know from the pubs and bars, but actual friends who ask after Scarlet and who want, and you have this interaction with this human, even though you know you haven't got an emotional attachment to him, you have an attachment in the sense that there is a connection to him. How does that change your perspective of people now you've sort of seen? Because obviously, as a trauma holder and as the person who's experienced a lot of what the system has, does it change your outlook on humans?
I still think people suck, but I'm
prepared to.
I'm slightly more aware that not all people suck, and there are some people out there that but you do have a few people that are genuine friends, and they don't want to just stab you in the back or build up something just to burn it down. And it's weird because like I've convinced myself that everyone will betray us or hurt us or stab us in the back at some point, because most of the people have.
And unfortunately, a lot of your interactions with people have actually been those negative in the past. And I suppose for you, the benefit of Danny being aware of the system, whereas before, Danny didn't know that when these difficult situations happened, you often stepped in. So your outlook on humans and people were always these bad situations, whereas now that you have an option to not just come out when the bad stuff happens. You know, Scarlet can come out and you've got people saying, you know, Scarlet's not been out for a while, we should have a Scarlet out, you know, let's go out for and I know there are certain nights out that Danny might do that are more of a Scarlet night out as opposed to a Danny night out. The most recent one you didn't get to go on, unfortunately, but you know, there is still those options for you to have them, and I guess that for you, does that change your level of frustration to the world?
Does, because the biggest frustration for me is to take away my choice. So if like now, because I know that everyone is quite happy for me to switch in and out as I like, as long as I'm not interacting with like the work and stuff, I kind of don't want to as much. It's that kind of thing of that I really want that, now I've got it, I don't want it anymore. It's that sort of situation. So
and
now
just having the Danny holding the knowledge that you guys actually exist probably makes a massive difference to the I don't need to come out now, because I'm allowed to come out. And especially now, a year down the line, yours and Danny's relationship is in a better place than it was.
It's getting better, and Danny now knows that there are some situations where she doesn't have to worry as much because she knows that I actually have her back. Like, I'm not going to take things out on her as much. And I take it out on myself as much as her. It's just, if I take something out on myself, we share a body. So it's
still going to be her. Even if you take something out in the body, in the instance you're in the body, at some point Danny comes back and is in the body that you. So there is always this difficulty.
But it's getting better. The communication is better. The resentment is less. I hijack her mouth a lot because I'm finding it hilarious that she'll be mid-conversation with someone and I'll have like a really snide or sarcastic comment and I can't help but just say it, to which the look on her face to everyone else upon hearing what it is that she said in my voice, or what sometimes I've said in her voice.
You're very good, actually. Danny said before, you're one of the ones who's most convincing as Danny, because you rarely, until you're comfortable, introduce yourself, which I have to say, by the way, I should acknowledge, I feel very honoured that you feel that comfortable to be able to come out. But yeah, you are the best at playing Danny.
Yeah. I've been playing Danny for a long time, so I can really dip in and out of her tone really quickly and very easily. But it's a skill of mine because I need to make sure that when we're dealing in difficult situations and they think they're talking to Danny, that Danny is able to go from being her to intimidating and back to her. very subtly and simply, whilst being able to keep hold of the memories of the situation. Whereas if it was Danny switching into me and switching back to Danny, the memory wouldn't be as solid. So when it's me the whole time, I can basically act like Danny in a situation, so I can test someone's buttons and go, okay, let's see what you're actually, what your intentions are for this person in a situation where I know I can hold my own.
So if you don't mind me asking, you seem to have always had quite a lot of control on your presence.
Yeah.
So, because I get the impression, I've talked to sort of Danny in the way she views the system, and I've obviously discussed it with Anita and her all-seeing, all-knowing. We discussed earlier that we felt she's a bit like Sauron, all-seeing, all-knowing, looking down on everything, but not really connecting. Like Anita has a very sort of, it's almost like I can kind of see, in those, supermarket, all the screens in the control room, watching everything.
She's essentially in a control room, control tower. Yeah. So she's aware of everything that goes on. She has access to everything, but there's no emotional attachment to anything that goes on with her.
You, as one of the alters, so I know that Danny doesn't, and that Danny's only starting in the last year or so to have that kind of conversations with you guys as the other alters, and I know that the one thing that she herself hasn't experienced or doesn't experience much is the headspace, the place where you all,
where we all hang
in
out.
essence live. Luna, sometimes it's quite hard to pin down on a topic, so I haven't actually, and next time
really?
Luna, yeah, it's very difficult to have just one conversation with Luna, I've noticed, because something pink or sparkly or shiny has happened in between. But I do tend to ask us, and Faith has been around when I've spoken. We've done Faith's Bill, but Faith's not really come out. And I think that from my impression with Faith, she doesn't really deal in the rest of that. Faith is just Faith.
Yeah, she doesn't deal in the outside world.
She's very much internal. So, but you seem to have, out of everybody I've spoken to, a really strong connection with everybody.
I like everyone. I know everyone. Some of them really annoy me. Others, like some of the younger, more passive alters, that have trouble. So Hope and Jane, because Jane's like a mini me. If you imagine like the teenage, like your classic teenage magic user that has just come into their powers, but is so full of rage that if they scream, they're just going to burn the house down. That's essentially Jane, and she has no emotional connections to anything. She's very, very bitter, very, very angry, and very hurt girl, so she doesn't come out very often. And I think is one of the ones that scares Danny the most, because of
I was going to say Danny has only ever briefly. So when Danny first started these videos, and I'm sure you may have watched some of the videos.
I've watched some.
The little drawing with all of the names around them, and I don't think Jane ever appeared on there. And she's mentioned Jane to me once in passing, and the only reference was that she'd burn the world.
Yeah, she would. Accidentally.
So okay, so it's actually really interesting that Danny, again, because obviously she has a different perspective. She's less in the headspace and has I guess maybe less of a connection to the passive parts of the system, whereas you seem to have this very strong relationship. Everybody quite well, and you've kind of very connected. So it's really interesting because Jane is an alter that I know very little about.
She's a young alter. She is one of the trauma holders, and she has dealt with a lot of bad stuff. But unlike Hope, who's the other trauma holder, Hope is essentially just really, really traumatized, curls up in a ball, and basically spends her whole time either tucked up in her hoodie or sat with Faith. Usually she's just with Faith helping in the garden, and she's the very kind of quiet, meek little girl. Whereas Jane is more angry, she lashes out more, which worries Danny, but I resonate so much with Jane because I see so much of myself in her that she's not that scary, and I'm the only one that can kind of calm her down. Even Anita struggles a little bit with Jane. I think because Anita is so disconnected. Like, Jane will listen to me because we kind of have a little bit of a bond. She's like a little sister to me. So she'll do things just because I've said so, whereas the others she won't, and she'll see things on the outside world occasionally, but it's not often she can get through because she's quite deep in the headspace, which I think helps. But I think Dani doesn't understand a lot of what goes on in the headspace. She doesn't really know what our inner world looks like, and Anita thinks at the minute that she's not ready to. I'm like, just give the girl the information, let her choose for herself. Like, that's the biggest problem that I have with DID in general, is that other alters dictate what someone else should and should not know about their life.
Anita holds all the barriers that are between where the blocks need to be, and some of those, I guess, are quite useful blocks if she can, if she can help make sure that if something traumatic is happening, that there is a block in place that it doesn't affect Hope or Jane. That's a very positive use of it, and I know that has been something that Anita has had to do before, try and be that sort of create that block. But I also know that she controls that, what information comes from you guys and the inner world to Dani.
Sometimes it feels a bit like being silenced in a way, or being moderated.
So would you want Dani to come into the inner world more?
I think she has a right to know. And I would be very frustrated if I was her, knowing that all this stuff goes on and that she's actually lived this life that is essentially a horror movie in some aspects, and she has no idea that she's dealt with any of that stuff. Like, she carries it well, and she's aware of some of it, but not too much. And I'm like, surely you've got a right to know what you've actually survived and what you've actually come through, because she doesn't view herself as a very strong person. And I'm like, if you knew what you've actually dealt with, like, that whole opinion of yourself would change in a heartbeat.
And I suppose that Anita's fear is, by letting her come into the inner world, she
would break.
She would see more of what you have seen and what Hope has seen. So when you're not here, so this is something actually now I'm really, really interested. We are going to get to the stats in a minute, I promise, but you've just opened some questions here, Scarlet, for me. So when you're not here, so if Dani's here or if anybody else is here and you're not either fronting or in the background, you're in the inner world, yes? So when Dani's not here, where does Dani go?
Dani doesn't really go anywhere. So what kind of happens is we have like a space in the headspace that is our world, then we can see it all and move through it. Dani essentially is just in nothingness. It's like she's asleep.
It's almost like in I guess, I don't want to say purgatory is the wrong word, but that kind of.
I was going to say, in Supernatural where they go to purgatory and it is just that black.
Yeah.
It's essentially that, and she'll see bits of stuff that she'll just think of as a dream. So we try and filter some of the inner world through dreams, so when she does experience it eventually, it's not as big of a shock to her. We've started to let through, so we all hang out a lot in the kitchen, and it's Faith's kitchen in her lovely little cave house, and there's a big table in the middle of it, and whenever she hears us all talking together, she always imagines us all talking around a kitchen table, which is essentially where we are. I don't think she realizes that she's actually glimpsing the inner world when she does that, or if it's just the visualization that makes it easier for her to imagine us all. But that's kind of where we are. And sometimes people are in, sometimes people aren't, and then they go in and out of doorways. So that's the place where we will go if we want to talk or communicate more effectively to Dani, because we know she has access to that place. So some of the younger alters and ones like Jane tend to avoid the kitchen area,
because that's the kitchen is the connection to Dani.
Yeah.
And then I guess from here, from that kitchen elsewhere, the other doors, you talked about Faith's garden, and that Hope is often there in the garden, helping out. So you all have your own places.
So it's like a cave system. So have you ever seen the houses that are built into cliffs?
Mm.
It's essentially one of those. So Faith has it. There's like a little outbuilding for anyone that wants to use it. There's like a beach, there's a woodland, and in the cave system is essentially just like a really nicely furnished house inside. We've got electricity and everything because, you know, we can have whatever we want. It's a made up world. But everyone's got their own different rooms and different areas, but there's enough space that you can leave. So I have like my own separate house further down in the woods, so I can just get away from everyone when I need to. Anita has her own place, separate, but everyone else kind of just lives in this cave community house because it's closer to nature, and everyone likes the fact that everyone kind of cooks and eats together.
And obviously, from your perspectives, because the thing with dissociative identity disorder, Dani didn't wake up a year and a half ago and suddenly has caught dissociative identity disorder. She's had this her pretty much entire life. Probably, so if people haven't watched earlier videos that Dani's done, I do thoroughly insist you go back because she always puts really useful information in. But it is a disorder condition that is often or it will happen in young children. So before really those identities and thoughts have properly formed, a traumatic experience will cause it to, and Multiplicity Me does the beautiful, is it Multiplicity Me or is it just the orange segments that it opens and shows the different. So you guys have been here since Dani was very young, or at least dissociative identity, it happened when she was young. You yourself remember coming around school time.
Me and Luna arrived like school time, like more kind of high school time.
Do you know who was first? Faith. Okay.
Faith was first, and Faith and Skittle would have been around first because Skittle is the main little in our system. She's about 8. And she's essentially the happy-go-lucky, confident child that Dani never was, or that Dani was expected to be.
As I said, Dani should have been if
whatever trauma happened to her early on, because the trauma has to be repetitive to cause this. It's not just one thing; it has to be repetitive, and it can happen like before you're a year old. Like it can literally be in infancy, like if you've not been seen or fed as often as you need to, or if your parents are practicing like the crying out technique. Things like that are enough to cause DID in children. There's other factors that have to be involved. It's not like every child that went through that crying out technique is going to develop it. There's other things, and it's that kind of thing. So Faith was the first, and Skittle would have been around that time.
And then over the time, the rest of you have come along. So in that time, you've been around since school. So Dani is good 15 years you've been around, if not longer. So you guys have had a whole life and a whole world that you've lived in Dani's head when you haven't had the opportunity to come out. So it's actually really like I'm really thankful that you've described the inner world, because you're the first alter who has.
Maybe I wasn't supposed to.
Well, I don't think it's just we haven't had those conversations.
Okay.
I think it's more that Dani is the one I speak to the most, so doesn't really know. Faith didn't come out properly. Anita is very factual, and you described something that's less factual and more kind of creative. Anita talks about things like she sort of sees it like you're all in. She talks about it in the terms of MMOs online where everybody's on their own server and she can hack between servers. But just this beautiful concept of what you just described, it's really lovely, and it's really nice to see and hear that you've had this whole connection, and there's all these relationships have grown throughout the years, and in time I guess that you'll be bringing Dani into those relationships.
I think that would be the aim. I mean,
I know
Alter,
Danny, that's, you know, she's only just been exploring this for a year or so, so it's
I think to be thrown straight into your inner world and go, hi, these are your altars, this is where we've been living for the past 15 years, welcome, I think would probably be a bit much for anyone to.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's hard enough to start off with getting the concept of the fact that you have more than one personality, because the point of the altars is each of you are fully formed in your own rights. You have personalities, you have dreams, you have hopes, you have desires, you have likes, you have dislikes.
Yeah.
They are, you know, and this is the point of what we're trying to do today. We're going to move on to the stats because we've just spent half an hour. So this is probably going to be a long video, internet, but it's been really nice to have this chance to meet Scarlet. And because the relationship between Scarlet and Danny is the most tense because of this concept of this being this persecutor, and then but now being that because Danny has a connection to you and she understands you a bit more, she's able to see you in this protector role now. But you've talked about earlier to me with your, you know, the resentment you've had for years that you've been putting yourself in these positions, and so it's been a really interesting conversation. But we are going to get to the Tiefling Cleric build.
Yeah.
So we decided a Tiefling Cleric. I'm pretty sure we're going to be Scarlet in colour. Yes.
Yes. We will be Scarlet.
We are going to be your colour.
Yeah.
And we were going to go for the Death Domain. Now, those people who are following along for the D&D, the Death Domain is considered one of the villainous class options. So you would find that in the Dungeon Master's Guide. The reason it's in here and not the Player's Handbook is because normally when you're playing in a campaign, you'd have to have a really justifiable reason for playing a villainous option. Now, Scarlet, you have provided an ample justifiable reasoning, and actually when we did the whole 20 minutes or so half an hour that we've just done earlier, and then we went to pick up the stats, which is when we realised that we hadn't been recording, we'd just been talking about alignments and this concept of actually would Scarlet's alignment be seen as evil because her actions to other people potentially could be seen as evil.
Yeah, I think
your intention has always been to protect yourself, but also the system.
Yeah, it's so like I think I struggle with the word evil because DID itself is seen as evil thanks to, you know, movies like Split.
And obviously, Alter is always seen as the one that's the...
Yeah, it's like, I am the bad evil Alter as far as DID concerns. I have no interest in at all of kidnapping people and locking them in a basement. I was like, if they're consenting adults and they're a bit kinky, sure.
That would be right up the street then.
That's different. Like, we'll have a different dungeon for that. But as far as, like, that kind of murder spree thing, that's not beneficial to a disorder that is designed to hide itself. Yeah. You know, we don't do that. I struggle with evil from that regard, but in regards to my own personal ethics, there's a lot of stuff that I would do that I could justify doing.
Well, so when we talked before about having this death domain, and we talked about the ways that Scarlet would probably use the spells, and I talked about in the campaign I run the incident when Kayla threatened to basically kill someone and then bring them back and kill them again and bring them back, and she had this whole moralistic dilemma over it because she's like, oh my god, that's evil, that's so an evil way to use
I could easily do that. Yeah, that's something that I would in a specific situation. I think I wouldn't be able to do it to someone that I deemed innocent, but if that person wasn't innocent, like if they were a criminal or they'd done things that I deemed so they're not just your average innocent person, then I will quite happily, because the other team, like Anita would like threaten them with death, and I'd be like, I'd kill you and I'd start torturing your ghost. I was like, and then I won't bring you back to life until you tell me what I want to know.
But I think actually what you just said there is the key thing to describe Scarlet and why don't worry, we're not going to build Scarlet with an evil alignment, because I don't see it. Like, you're not. Actually, what you've just described there is actually chaotic good. You might do something terrible, but you would do it for the right reasons.
Really?
Something bad for the right reasons. Well, yeah, because you just said, I wouldn't do that to someone who is innocent, or to, you know, a child or someone who didn't deserve it. But if they're a rapist, a murderer, a bad guy, yeah, I'm going to do it to them. So actually there is sort of...
It's like to someone innocent, I would push them and I'd make them feel uncomfortable and kind of threaten to do these things, but I wouldn't actually be able to do those things to some innocent woman that I've just found in the house, or innocent man that I found in
ultimately,
the house.
Scarlet has still got morals. She's still got ethics. You are still an ethical human. You're still an ethical being. You just, your concept, you know, you've seen a whole different world that Danny has seen, for example. So you have to deal with the world differently. So internet, let us know your thoughts, but I genuinely don't see you with an evil alignment. I see you with...
Because, like, I'd have no issue killing someone knowing that they would kill me.
Yeah.
Whereas I know Luna would struggle just killing anyone, even if they were going to kill her. She would really struggle with that. She'd rather render them unconscious or something.
So my other half, he always plays chaotic good characters, and he has a mug for D&D that just says chaotic good, doing the wrong thing for the right reason.
Yeah, because I think Luna's chaotic good. Did she say something like she caused an accident to save a puppy?
Yeah,
that's her kind of chaotic good. So she'd do stupid things for the right reasons rather than bad things for the right reasons.
So I mean, traditionally,
I think it'd be fun having two chaotic good characters that play it in very different ways.
Yeah, because traditionally the way you'd build D&D is, the obvious way is to build Luna's chaotic good and you as chaotic evil, but I don't agree that you should have an evil alignment. I see that you're both very, very different chaotic goods. Your aims are very different and your approaches are very different, but you've never done anything dangerous or as a risk to the system because you wanted to hurt the system. Everything you do, for the most part, is because you're trying to protect yourself or Danny or whoever's fronting at the time.
Occasionally I'll be a little bit self-destructive, but that's more recreational self-destruction that I think most people will do, that I wouldn't do in a situation where I knew we were actually going to get injured or hurt. It's more of a...
It's really interesting when you talked earlier, like you were saying that, you know, you're the more sexually risque Alter, but at the same time, you're not going to do anything morally wrong to affect, you know, you're in a relationship.
Like, I would never, like, when the sister's in a relationship, I would never go out on a night out and hook up with someone else knowing full well they were in a relationship. Like, I wouldn't be able to do that. I would tease and mess around, absolutely, but I wouldn't be able to actually go through, because, like, the body and the face is in a relationship, so I would have to check. And luckily, you know, we're generally relatively open relationships, so it's never an issue if I want to. It's just I have to find the right people to mess around with. So yeah, I like the idea that I'm actually a good person.
Yeah, I obviously, you know, it will be interesting because when Danny switches back the next time we record, she may at some point watch this video. You know, Danny, I'd like to hear your opinion. But
is she editing this one, or are you editing it?
I'm editing this one, actually.
Oh, that'll be an interesting one for her to watch then, because she won't have any sneak peeks.
No, I think
maybe we should film her watching it.
Yeah, she's editing her, so I will be editing this one. So, Danny, this is now on YouTube, and you've now watched this. So message me and let me know what your opinion, because obviously I know that you two have that real and I'm hoping actually we've been able to be open in a conversation and show you actually do really care, don't you? Did I just give out a secret there?
I'm the bad one.
No, you actually care quite a lot. It's very interesting how much you do, but how you play it.
Yeah, it's safe to be scary.
Well, your job is, we talked before, your job and your role is always to jump in and to push the buttons, to test the humans, you're the defense mechanism. Everybody has it, but you are a human in your own right. But you're the defense mechanism which just goes, fuck you, before someone says it to you.
Yeah.
That's what you do. So we're going to go with the Tiefling. as we build the character. Your intelligence score will increase by 1.
Nice.
And your charisma score increases by 2, which come from your tiefling things.
Are tieflings intelligence or wisdom based classes?
It's the cleric, and it's a wisdom based. So we'll put the highest score in wisdom, but I do think you would probably have quite a high score in charisma as well.
Charisma, you need a lot of intimidation than persuasion. Yeah. They're charisma based, aren't they? So
yeah. So I would say that I'd probably put your highest stat in wisdom as your cleric casting ability, and then I'd put one of your second highest stats in charisma. And then you actually do have some quite nice stats. You've still got a fairly good stats to put in intelligence. So they're definitely, what's coming through when I talk to you is definitely those stats as a combination, obviously, what you need for D&D and what you are.
Yeah.
So a couple of standard things for the tieflings, for those of you who have never built a tiefling before. Now, the reason we've chosen a tiefling is tieflings are very interesting because in D&D they have quite a bad history, lineage. They were basically descended from demons.
Yeah.
Short description. So they don't have to be evil. You get dark vision, which is great. Your infernal heritage allows you to see well in the dark. You are resistant to fire because you've got hellish abilities. You also get you get 2 infernal legacies. One of them's really cool, and I think actually this is right up Scarlet Street. So when someone hurts you, so like if you take damage in a combat, as a reaction, you can then make your hellish rebuke harm them.
Yeah.
I
would want hellish rebuke.
Yeah, I think that's definitely up Scarlet Street.
Yeah.
So your stats. Well, you've got 16s in charisma, which will put your charisma up to 18, make you very charming.
Oh, I am.
You are very charming. What would you say is probably your lowest stats? So we've got left. So we've done wisdom
What
and
was that?
Nothing.
What's my lowest stat going to be?
Nothing.
I had a snide comment from a friend then.
What was the
comment? It wasn't a comment, it was a look.
Snide look is different.
What's my lowest stat going to be?
I'm staying out of it.
I've got pretty good constitution.
Dex.
Okay.
Oh, we've also got a 10. So, well, your lowest is a 10, so I can put that as your dex.
Put that as my dex then.
Are you quite clumsy there, Scarlet?
No. Apparently.
Do you know what? It's a perfect time that your friends have turned up, because now we're going to get the most perfect build.
You've got the friends that call me by my name as well. So.
Yep.
So these are the ones who know Scarlet.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're saying dex is going to be your lowest score. You think your constitution's quite high. How about your strength and your intelligence?
My intelligence is good. My strength is decent.
Okay.
We're all been like that with strength.
So you've got a 12.
I think my strength is, because if I'm around doing something, I've got Sonia in the background. I think my strength is.
It's actually coming from her.
It's actually hers.
Okay.
So they're agreeing.
What we're saying is Scarlet herself isn't particularly strong. It's only if Sonia's around. Okay. So I'm going to put 11 for your strength.
Yeah, okay.
So you've got a 14 and a 12 left. Which would be stronger, intelligence or constitution?
Stop looking at me.
Constitution.
Okay.
Because I'm quite smart, but if I'm in a fight, I will keep going even though my instincts say that I should stop.
Okay, that's yeah, and actually that balances quite well because you've got intelligence and wisdom tend to work quite well together. They're both your intellectual processing, And obviously, because you have wisdom quite high as a spellcaster, it kind of helps to have that slightly lower on the intelligence that does reflect that moment where Scarlet might push when perhaps she shouldn't.
That is me.
When it would be better to walk away.
They're both laughing.
We love you.
All right. So they're your base stats.
Yeah.
For your background, have you thought about, in terms of D&D, what Scarlet's background would be?
Probably criminal.
Okay. No, do you know what? I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to say it, but I don't mean it again in a bad way. It's more that sense of being able to trick people and
Working in the morally grey area.
kind of con people, in essence.
So like working in the morally grey area is what has just been said.
I mean, you could have charlatan as well. Also, so you've got criminal, which is basically breaking the law, in essence. I'd say charlatan is more about making tricks and teasing. You can tease out their heart's desires after a few minutes conversation.
Oh, apparently we've got to that one.
Yes, I think, considering what you've been saying about people in general. So your proficiencies from that become deception and sleight of hand. So we're just going to write down charlatan.
Yeah.
So you get deception and sleight of hand to start with, which I think
I would hit on someone and steal the wallet, I think. So
yeah. No, I think they
in
are
D&D, guys, I've not done that in real life.
Really, Scarlet?
Yes. Fire.
The thing is if I'm not careful, you might decide to never want to do one of these videos again. She's like, she's really good at reading me. I'm not coming out again. So we've got your base stats. We know what you're going to get from your background. We know what you get from Tiefling. So before we wrap up, we're just going to do the last bits of the Death Domain. Also the Cleric build. So as we've discussed before, you get things that are part of the standard build as a Cleric. So your proficiencies, you'll be proficient in certain types of armour. You can probably wear a decent amount of armour. So you get saving throws, wisdom and charisma. That's a really... Wisdom, charisma. Yeah, I would say that you get wisdom as your saving throw because it's your spell casting.
Yeah.
Charisma, again, you're quite good at dealing with things that if you were trying to...
If someone was trying to charm me, it wouldn't work.
No, I think
They'd have to be
you're
really
gonna have
good at it. I'd have a high DC on it, I think.
So you can now choose 2 skills from history, insight, medicine, persuasion, or religion.
Insight and persuasion.
I was going to say insight and persuasion. As soon as I read them, I was like,
There's only 2 that's paid me.
Because you're probably the one who has the best concept of reading people. Because that's your job. You're reading people to see whether you're testing them, you're pushing the buttons, you're reading them.
This person a threat. And
Yeah.
then if they don't see themselves as a threat, I'm like, how can I push you to make you a threat? What will make you snap? Essentially. And Paul Simon's been tested a lot, and he hasn't yet. So
I know. Well, you might have to stay around then.
it's looking that way.
No. But on the plus side, it's really nice that the collective have found a really nice human.
They have found a nice human. Oh yeah, we can keep him as a pet, I think.
Again, Danny, feedback on this. I'm going to leave that line in. So you've chosen a cleric, so you get the certain standard things as I said before. So your spell casting abilities. I'm not going to go through that because they'll be on the sheets when we publish those. The key things is your death domain. So you're going to gain the proficiency of martial weapons.
Nice.
So you can also use martial weapons as well as other types of weapons. You have more access. What I will do is I will send you these spells because my plan is to write up where we've got to and then say to each of you, level up your character to this level. But just so you know that as a death domain, you get access to some slightly better evil spells. So you'll get things like false life, ray of sickness, blindness and deafness, rare as enfeeblement, animate dead, vampiric touch, which is a good one because that one you get to take healing off someone else, cause them damage, and you get to heal.
I'll just let someone like beat me and then at the end just like drain their life from them as I heal.
That would be very Scarlet.
That'd be very.
So yeah, so we've got the basics. We know what your build is looking like. I'm going to get
I
these.
will probably take a couple of classes in Rogue.
Okay,
To
so
make the
my plan
extra
is.
shadowy stealthy.
No, that makes sense. So my plan is to say that I'm going to ask Danny to probably build these, or Danny, or each of you, if you're happy to build your own.
Yeah.
It may be, because obviously I don't think Faith's going to be building her own, for example, or Danielle.
No.
But I suspect you and Luna. Danielle has not appeared for any of this. I don't even know if Danielle knows.
One of us needs to put it on YouTube. She's filmed a video for YouTube introducing herself that she did after like a consult or something, and it's hilarious. So we're gonna put it up, and then we're gonna do like each of the altars are gonna watch it and basically just laugh, I think. But yeah, that's coming.
Okay, I look forward to that. So I'm probably going to say to Danny or to yourself to build these to a level 5, I think is what I've settled on. So you can either multi-class at that during that level building, or you can bring it in later if you want. That's up to you. But it'd be really interesting because we haven't really covered what a multi-class. So if you decide to do that, would you be willing to come back and do a video on your multi-class?
Yeah, because I don't think we should multi-class too much as a collective, because that's just going to be a pain in the butt to play. But I think for some of us, some elements of multi-classing would be useful, because I think Anita having a few extra spells and stuff would be beneficial for her role, and for me to be even sneakier than I already am would benefit for me. I'm not sure if anyone else really needs to multi-class.
But if you are willing to come back once you've finished that build, it's been a pleasure having you.
That's how much Five Finger Death Punch.
Danny plays first. I'm going to wrap it up there because this is probably going to be our longest video, and your guests are here, and we are majorly over. Yeah. But it's been a lot of fun. I hope it has been fun for you as well. It's been
interesting.
It's been really enlightening having had a chance to see the world from your perspective, and actually get a chance to talk to you. You're one of the few active alters I've not properly met yet, so this was you've been around, but this is the first time.
I don't usually come out properly now.
I'm going to let you go and have fun.
Okay.
Enjoy the afternoon. It's been a pleasure. See you all later, internet.